Hello and welcome to Rising. I'm joined today by Jessica Burbank, who's filling in for Brianna Joy Gray. We'll see Brianna later this week, of course, but in the meantime, happy to have you with me here, Jessica, although not literally in the studio. I think you might be off in outer space somewhere.
I am, Robbie, reporting to you live from somewhere in the galaxy. I didn't get enough on Friday, so I came back for a Monday, but I hope Brianna feels better soon.
Fantastic. All right, what are we talking about?
Let's get into it, Robbie. Former President Trump was ordered to pay $355 million in penalties and has been levied a lifetime ban on doing real estate business in the state of New York. Judge Arthur Engoron handed down the brutal ruling to Trump and a team of his executives late last week. Trump and his sons Eric and Don Jr. are also barred from serving as executives at his company for the next 3 years. Prosecutors, as a reminder, say Trump fraudulently inflated his net worth and other property details on tax documents. Meanwhile, the New York Post reports that MAGA-loving truckers for Trump say they're refusing to drive their goods to New York City in protest of Judge Engoron's ruling. There's no telling how many truckers could join in on that movement.
And in a recent survey of a panel of so-called experts specializing in the American presidency, former President Donald Trump found himself at the bottom of the list. President Joe Biden, on the other hand, ranked 14th. So let's come back to that in a minute. But as far as this court ruling, I was reading from Stephen Calabresi, who's a Northwestern law professor and one of the, I think, a co-chairman of the Federalist Society, who was writing at the Volokh Conspiracy at Reason.com that this is a very bad ruling. He said the New York state laws used to go after Trump have never been used this way before historically, and that it was in fact a victimless crime, that the banks made their own assessments of Trump's net worth, that it is routine for people in Trump's position to use creative means to project, to raise and lower what your assets are worth in purposes of securing loans and working with the banks, that this is common practice, and this is the first time ever someone has faced this kind of penalty for it.
Yes, we live in a fun time in the United States, Robbie, where things that are common practice also happen to be against the law. Trump's alleged fraudulent, I guess it's not alleged because the court officially ruled in this direction, that his ill-gotten gains, so it's $370 million that Donald Trump got additionally in capital gains or what have you, through getting better interest rates, getting loans that he wouldn't have gotten otherwise, thanks to him inflating his assets. Now, I wouldn't feel good about this as just a normal person, but also as a working class person. You kind of think the reason that people have to go to work every single day and work for a wage is because they don't have capital to start businesses. And a big reason they don't have capital to start businesses is because they can't get loans to start businesses, because it turns out you have to have some kind of track record. You have to have some kind of assets as collateral. You have to have good credit, right? And something to prove that if things go south, you can sell it and still make good on your loan with the bank. Trump, by inflating his assets, was lying about what kind of collateral he had. This kind of lending has been very risky in the financial world. It's caused financial crises. But just as a regular working person, as a little guy, it doesn't feel good that someone who supposedly will fight for the middle and working class people of the United States is willing to just lie to get more loans, to start more businesses, to accumulate more capital than he already has. Now, Don Jr. and Eric can't run the business, but Ivanka could, which is really interesting.
Yeah, I just don't know that, you should have your business taken from you because it makes somebody else feel not good. Like the banks didn't sue Trump. I mean, if the banks felt so that he misrepresented himself and this was outside common practice and they'd stolen from him, they could have gone after him. But in fact, that's not the case. And banks actually testified at the trial that they would be happy to offer him money again. This is a politically motivated prosecutor, Letitia James, who came after Trump for this law, who sought office on a platform of finding some pretext to go after Donald Trump, and she found it. So here we are.
Well, I think some banks probably would have given loans to other business people who wanted to start a business, invest in a business they already have. And instead, that money went to someone who didn't have the assets to back up the loan. I mean, theoretically, if there's a small business owner who applied for a loan at the same bank and didn't get it, it could have been because that capital went towards Donald Trump when it should not have. So that would be someone who actually is hurt. I don't think it's a victimless crime, simply because there's also a lot of contractors that worked with Donald Trump because he was also a fraudulent person that didn't make good on his payments to contractors. Those people got burned as well. And so, yeah, of course, it's really tough for a contractor who's an electrician, who's a construction worker, to sue Donald Trump, who's the head of a huge real estate corporation. But the court couldn't rule on that. They couldn't make a decision on that. There were so many aspects of the business that were fraudulent. So making a decision on this, I think, will help maybe Donald Trump or the Trump family run their business in a more sustainable or honest way going forward. There were people burned. And I think the truckers refusing to go in and out of New York City is a bit funny. It hurts them more than anyone else. Those contracts are huge. New York City is a huge economic hub. But the person who posted to X, the trucker who started this kind of movement, if you can call it that, said he's talked to 10 other truckers. So I really don't see this movement growing very much. It seems to be too small to have a real impact.
What about these historians doing presidential rankings, which are, of course, useless and totally different from how real people think? These people, ranking Joe Biden up there as like a decent president and Trump dead last. Of course, Donald Trump and Joe Biden are currently running against each other, and Trump is ahead in the polls. He's ahead in the swing state polls. If the election were held today, he would win. I think this is a great way to show the discord between elites and experts and that kind of people and ordinary folks whose lived experience is not, I love Joe Biden and I hate Donald Trump, for the most part.
Yeah, to see Biden ranked 14th, it's kind of laughable. There's all kinds of weird standards that some historians use that other historians, so even a different group of historians just still wouldn't be representative of the American population, perhaps,
right, but
could maybe give a more critical analysis of what makes a good president than just, he upholds American values. He's more of the same kind of establishment guy. He acts how we would expect a president would act. I mean, there's all sorts of reasons why the American people don't approve of Biden as much as they have in other presidents, why he has such low approval ratings compared to even
right,
Donald Trump or, Obama halfway through his presidency when there was a financial crisis. And it's because people are struggling. It's not Biden's fault that the economy is as terrible as it is. We know wages have been stagnant since the 70s. But when you inherit this kind of economy and you don't make decisions to make life better for everyday people, just appointing a different chair of the Federal Reserve who's not going to institute huge interest rate policies that produce more unemployment among the working population that's already struggling under inflation. There are all kinds of metrics that you could select policy-wise as to who would be a good president, maybe foreign policy-wise. What's the view of the global population of the United States right now? It's probably not very good, considering most of the world categorizes what Israel is doing is wrong, and the United States is financing it. There's all kinds of metrics that are very different from what I think this group of historians picked that, are valid, are things that most Americans agree upon, not just the progressive policy.
Yeah, as you pointed out, Biden's approval ratings right now is lower than any recent president, yet he's being ranked 14th best president by these people. Totally just absolutely different from how actual ordinary Americans think. Presidential historian, you're absolutely right that these rankings are very arbitrary and mostly based on people's, I don't even know how do you objectively say we disagree obviously on policies. Republicans, Democrats disagree on what are the good things to do for the country. So of course, the politics of the person doing the ranking would, correspond to unless you go far enough back in time where it's not, George Washington and Abraham Lincoln are less political figures, so there's less things to disagree about. So of course they get ranked high. I always find it interesting over time, which presidents have like fallen from the good graces of historians, which overwhelmingly is two people, Woodrow Wilson and Andrew Jackson, who were previously very well liked by by presidential ranking type people. But those two were very racially problematic for different reasons. Andrew Jackson, like genocidal toward Native Americans. Woodrow Wilson having very backward and like pro-Confederacy views on equal rights for African Americans, and like those things used to not hold those people back at all, but because of the increasing like salience of racial issues, they've now plummeted even in the eyes of liberal historians. And then someone like Bill Clinton is actually ranked more positively by Republican leading historians than Democratic historians, interestingly enough.
Yeah, that is very funny. Trump being ranked last is maybe not surprising at this point. We just saw that Mitt Romney said he wouldn't vote for Donald Trump due to this ruling that Donald Trump was found by the judge to have had a history of sexual assault. This is the Jean Carroll case. And then also, I want to bring up another point related to the truckers, how people are responding to Trump's many court rulings that are not going in his favor, but that there's a GoFundMe that currently has $310,000 raised for Donald Trump to help pay some of that $355 million settlement. I just wanted to see how much of a dent that would make. It's about 0.8%, so less than 0.01 percentage, or less than 0.1 percentage point. You would have to multiply what's already been raised, the $310,000, which is a pretty big sum of money, by 1,145 to get to 355 million. It just really paints the picture of, how much money Trump really owes, how serious these rulings are, but also how much money Trump, got according to this judge in ill-gotten gains, $370 million.
All right, we'll continue to follow that, and we'll be back with more Rising right after this.